No, he didn't know nothing. Didn't know what was going on. She just said she was going to walk and never come back home.
She said to me, Ruth, you don't know what power is until you've held someone's life in your hands. My base instinct then was to think, okay, now I get it. Now I see the woman who has committed murder.
She went off, spitting, scratching, swearing, kicking, biting, yelling and screaming like a mad woman.
When all this came out, we got a shock. There were people we were really shocked. All of us were very shocked.
Really syphilitic little rat. She is an unattractive nobody.
Equally as evil, but even the word evil doesn't seem to fit to my. It just seems to be an understatement.
Ini bukanlah berita biasa, namun benar-benar kisah nyata. Hal gila dari seorang istri yang tega meninggalkan suami dan 6 anaknya hanya demi fantasi gelap bersama kekasihnya yang menjadikan mereka sebagai pasangan predator mematikan yang paling dibenci di Australia. Setelah kejahatan mereka terungkap berkat seorang gadis cantik berusia 17 tahun. Ikutilah kisah nyata ini selengkapnya dalam tayangan dokumenter khas K-Channel. Sesaat lagi hanya di YouTube K-Channel, Membuka Jendela Dunia. Hari itu tampak seperti hari-hari biasanya di Australia Barat. Tetapi di daerah pinggiran kota, terlihat seorang gadis remaja cantik berlarian dalam keadaan setengah tanpa busana. Ia berlari sekencang-kencangnya dan tampak begitu ketakutan sambil berteriak minta tolong di sepanjang jalan. Gadis itu juga meneriakkan apa yang telah dialaminya. Namun ia berhasil lolos dari cengkraman mereka. Mereka yang kemudian akan dikenal sebagai pasangan predator sakit jiwa yang paling dibenci warga Australia.
Hi, I'm Vinko from Perth, Western Australia. You are watching K-Channel, the most famous YouTube channel in Indonesia.
Sebagai ibu kota Australia Barat, kota Perth merupakan salah satu kota yang indah dan aman. Tetapi pada hari ini, di kota Perth terdapat sebuah misteri hilangnya seorang wanita muda cantik, mahasiswi psikologi dari University of Western Australia bernama Mary Nelson, berusia 21 tahun, yang telah dilaporkan pada pihak kepolisian. Beberapa hari kemudian, polisi kembali menerima laporan orang hilang. Tetapi kali ini usianya jauh lebih muda. Ia adalah Sue Candy yang masih berusia 15 tahun. Tetapi beberapa lama kemudian, kedua gadis yang hilang itu dikabarkan telah menelpon dan menulis surat pada orang tua mereka yang mengatakan mereka sengaja pergi dari rumah. Tetapi tidak sampai di situ. Seorang wanita muda berusia 21 tahun, Dennis Brown, kembali dilaporkan menghilang saat ia pulang dari rumah temannya, tetapi ia tidak pernah kunjung pulang ke rumahnya. Di akhir tahun 1986 ini, timbul ada rasa tidak nyaman di kota Perth ketika beberapa wanita muda menghilang secara misterius. Namun di masa ini, bukanlah sesuatu hal yang perlu dikhawatirkan oleh polisi.
At least one of the families was very distressed because the police suggested she'd run away from home, got mixed up with the wrong crowd and so it was in a climate where there wasn't that media furor yet about there is a serial killer prowling the streets of Perth. It was, okay, a few women have
Dan saat polisi menghubungi Ibu Dennis, polisi terkejut dan mencium keanehan karena lagi-lagi dikabarkan Dennis menelpon kerabatnya bahwa ia sengaja kabur dari rumah orang tuanya di saat ia telah dilaporkan menghilang. Dikarenakan ada suatu perihal pola perilaku yang dianggap janggal, lalu Inspektur Kerridge diperintahkan untuk segera menyelidikinya.
We showed a photo to a lady across the road from where this victim number 4 had been sighted. She identified her as having been there catching a bus at the Fremantle.
Kini polisi meyakini bahwa Dennis Brown berada di daerah Fremantle. Dan ketika polisi hendak pergi menuju Fremantle, tiba-tiba sebuah laporan mengejutkan datang yang akan menyingkap sebuah misteri yang menggegerkan warga Australia Barat. Hari itu, seorang gadis remaja cantik tanpa busana, hanya memakai pakaian dalam dengan luka-luka memar di sekujur tubuhnya yang begitu jelas terlihat. Ia berlari ketakutan di sepanjang jalan Moorhouse demi menyelamatkan hidupnya. Kate terus berlari untuk mencari pertolongan. Kemudian ia melihat seorang pria sedang merokok di depan sebuah toko. Dalam hitungan detik, ia berhasil lari mendekati pria tersebut.
Knocked on the door, no one home. I'm hysterical. I'm crying and laughing at the same time. Next house, no one home. Next house, no one home. I ran up to him and said, I've been... Please take me inside and call the police.
Were you thinking at this point that she might come after you?
Absolutely. Why do you think? That's why I said if a woman comes here and says I've had a fight with her, that I'm her daughter, don't believe her. Can you please call the police?
So we picked her up from a shop in Willagee, and she related to this what was then rather bizarre story unfolded. About how she'd been picked up off Stirling Highway.
Akhirnya Kate berhasil mendatangi kantor polisi terdekat, dan saat itu ia diterima oleh Laura Hancock, seorang polisi wanita yang baru seminggu bertugas. Namun laporan yang dibuat oleh Kate dianggap cerita yang sulit dipercaya, dan cerita Kate tersebut sempat dianggap sebagai laporan palsu. Tetapi Kate bersikukuh dan mengatakan pada polisi untuk berhenti menanyainya dan meminta polisi untuk segera menangkap mereka.
I was told that it was a bizarre story and to stitch her up for a false report. The focus was, this is who they are, go get them. Listen to me, here's my story, this is why, this is how, and this is who. Go get them.
Ketika detektif Paul Ferguson sedang menangani kasus Dennis Brown, lalu ia mendapat telepon dari Chris Cassidy, seorang sersan yang bertugas di Fremantle pada saat itu, yang mengatakan bahwa ia telah berbicara dengan seorang gadis muda yang telah memberitahu mereka tentang sesuatu yang mungkin berkaitan dengan kasus menghilangnya Dennis Brown. Lalu Paul Ferguson berbicara pada gadis muda itu yang bernama Katie Moyer.
I got a call over the radio from Chris Cassidy, who was another sergeant down at Fremantle at the time, to say that they were speaking to a young lady who had told them something, and it could be connected to the Denise Brown file, and that I should come and speak with her.
Kate menyadari bahwa polisi tidak mempercayai cerita mengerikan yang baru saja dialaminya. Ia kemudian berusaha menenangkan diri dan mulai menceritakan dari awal hingga akhirnya dia berada di kantor polisi secara rinci. Katie menceritakan pada Paul Ferguson bahwa pada malam itu ia sedang berjalan di sepanjang jalan raya. Kemudian sebuah mobil menghampiri dan berhenti di dekatnya. Lalu seorang wanita turun dari mobil tersebut dan menanyakan arah jalan padanya, di mana jalan tersebut adalah jalan tepat di mana tempat tinggal Dennis Brown. Tetapi kemudian, Katie tiba-tiba ditangkap dan ditarik paksa untuk masuk ke dalam mobil tersebut oleh si wanita yang saat itu membawa senjata tajam. Mereka lalu membawa Katie ke rumah mereka di Jalan Mulhouse. Kemudian mereka menyekap Katie di dalam kamar dan berantainya ke tempat tidur. Setelah mereka melepaskan pakaian Katie dengan paksa dan menyimpan barang-barang milik Katie, lalu mereka berdua melakukan hal buruk padanya, hal yang sungguh tidak ingin dialami oleh siapapun. Mereka berdua adalah David Birnie dan Catherine Birnie, yang kemudian mereka akan dikenal sebagai pasangan Birnie Predator yang keji, yang paling dibenci di Australia.
I would have been talking to them for 2 hours before the first trip, and that was just all about mental torture. He made me dance in front of him to Romeo and Juliet. I cried when I danced. I ended up getting at about 12:30 at night. She sat on a chair at the end of the bed and watched. They've put 4 chains on the posts of a single bed. They chained my left ankle to the left post, my right ankle to the right post, my left hand to the left, my right to the right. Right again. I cried throughout this one. Gives me a couple of sleeping pills. Tells me to have them and go to sleep, so I put them in my mouth under my tongue. I then take the sleeping pills out of my mouth, hide them under the mattress, and spend the whole night going, I'm in a nightmare.
Kate yakin bahwa tak akan lama lagi hidupnya akan berakhir di tangan mereka. Tetapi ia tidak ingin menjadi korban mereka yang berakhir dengan kematian. Lalu ia mulai menyusun rencana.
I said, can I ask a question? And they said, what? And I said, are you going to rape me or are you going to kill me? And they said, well, I only rape you if you're good. I wasn't there first. They'd done this before. They were good at it. All I was thinking about was, well, that I was going to die, that I couldn't believe this had happened to me. Why had I been so stupid? I was very compliant. I was very nice. I managed to become friends with her enough. She told me to go to the room, shut up and not say a word, or she'd kill me. Gives me a couple of sleeping pills. Tells me to have them and go to sleep, so I put them in my mouth under my tongue. I then take the sleeping pills out of my mouth, hide them under the mattress, and spend the whole night going, I'm in a nightmare.
She had got on very well with Kathy intentionally. She knew that she needed to do that, and so she gained her confidence.
Selama 24 jam ke depan, Katie mencoba berteman dengan Catherine dan meyakinkannya untuk dapat melepaskan ikatannya. Lalu ia meninggalkan beberapa petunjuk di sekitar rumah itu dengan harapan agar kelak si pembunuh dapat terungkap dan dapat memberatkan hukumannya.
I didn't make the odds better for myself. Instead, I just left evidence everywhere so that when I died, people would work out I was one of the missing girls. I hid my lipstick in the beanbag and a packet of cigarettes through in the roof by standing on the back of the couch, so my parents would know I hadn't run away from home.
Katie juga menjelaskan kepada polisi mengapa dia yakin bahwa merekalah yang berada di balik hilangnya Dennis Brown, yang kemungkinan telah dibunuh. Karena pada malam itu, Catherine bertingkah aneh ketika dia menemukan poster orang hilang, Dennis Brown, di surat kabar.
We were sitting in the lounge room together, Catherine and I, and Monday's paper was there, and there was a picture of Denise Brown's head, and Catherine started laughing. I said, what's funny? And she said, you think a big girl like that could look after herself? And you couldn't tell from the photo that she was a big girl. So I knew for a fact that they'd killed Denise Brown.
And she was laughing at
She was laughing.
Did you ask her at that point?
Of course not. I didn't want to die. It was just noted.
Pada pagi itu, David Birnie berangkat kerja, sementara Catherine tinggal di rumah untuk menjaga Katie. Beberapa jam kemudian, suara ketukan pintu terdengar. Lalu Catherine segera membawa Katie ke dalam kamar dan menguncinya. Dan Catherine segera berlari membukakan pintu. Dan ini adalah sebuah kesempatan bagi Katie untuk bisa melarikan diri.
Kathy allowed it, released her from the from the bed and allowed her to watch television. But whilst they were doing that, there was a knock on the door, which was actually a drug deal. They were selling cannabis at the time. And so she put her in the bedroom, but she didn't secure her to the bed. So she took the opportunity to get out the window, and that's and the rest is history.
Dan beruntungnya, ia mendapati jendela yang tidak terkunci. Dalam keadaan setengah tak berbusana, ia segera keluar dari rumah itu dan berlari sekencang-kencangnya untuk mencari pertolongan sambil berteriak ketakutan.
I finally got the courage to check the window to make the noise that was needed to break the lock.
Dari informasi tersebut, Detektif Paul Ferguson mulai melakukan investigasi selanjutnya dengan mendatangi rumah horor yang diceritakan oleh Gary. Rumah tersebut berada di Jalan Morehouse.
She was just so convincing and so genuine that I had no hesitation in accepting what she'd told us. So we moved. So then I asked her the obvious question, would you identify the house? And she said, oh, I think so, yeah, it's not that far from here. So we said, righto, she was in the back seat, so we drove her past and she looked at the house and she ducked down and burst into tears, which was really the first sign of emotion, and she said, that's the house. So we drove past the house. She actually became quite upset when she pointed the house out. And at that point, we realised everything she said, we were satisfied that everything she said was absolutely accurate. You know, we were convinced it just wasn't a made-up story.
Ketika mereka mendatangi rumah tersebut, ternyata tidak ada penghuni dan pintu rumahnya pun kebetulan tidak terkunci. Tetapi di dalam rumah itu, detektif menemukan banyak hal yang ternyata menguatkan semua yang telah diceritakan oleh Katie.
She said that she was given a sleeping pill which she spat out. That pill was in actual fact found on the floor in the bedroom. She said that she had been chained up and locks had been used and there was numbers on the locks. We found some chains and some locks with numbers on them.
Sejak saat itu, detektif terus mengawasi rumah tersebut sampai si penghuni rumah benar-benar kembali pulang. Dan tidak lama kemudian, seorang wanita tiba ke rumah itu. Dia adalah Catherine Burney. Polisi lantas segera menangkap Catherine. Walau Catherine melakukan perlawanan, tetapi polisi berhasil membawanya ke kantor polisi untuk diinterogasi lebih lanjut. Sementara pasangan Catherine Burney, yaitu David Burney, ia dijemput oleh kepolisian di tempat kerjanya yang berjarak tidak jauh dari rumah tersebut. Catherine Burney. Ia terlahir dengan nama Catherine Margaret Harrison. Ia lahir pada 23 Mei 1951. Sementara David Burney, ia terlahir dengan nama David John Burney. Ia lahir pada 16 Februari 1951. David dan Catherine Burney pertama kali bertemu ketika mereka masih kanak-kanak. Mereka tumbuh di Wattle Grove, sebuah daerah semi pedesaan yang tenang di pinggiran sebelah timur kota Perth. David adalah anak tertua dari Johnny dan Margaret Burney. David memiliki 4 saudara laki-laki dan 4 saudara perempuan sekandung dalam sebuah keluarga yang tidak harmonis dan lingkungan yang kumuh, di mana peran kedua orang tuanya tidak berfungsi bagi putra-putrinya. Dengan keadaan fisiknya yang cacat, secara genetik, ayahnya banyak menghabiskan waktu untuk bekerja. Ia berusaha menafkahi keluarganya. Sementara ibunya, ia seorang alkoholik. Ia tidak merawat dirinya, sehingga penampilannya tampak begitu lusuh dan kotor. Begitupun keadaan dalam rumahnya, yang selalu tampak kotor dan berantakan, karena sang ibu tidak pernah membersihkan rumah mereka.
And I can well imagine the kids being raised in that environment. Mess and dirt and filth everywhere. And that's no way to raise a child.
I would be on the local bus coming to and from school Often his mother would be on the bus too. She would have this wet, filthy, starving, dirty little baby on her knee, pull out her cigarettes and her bad language, and she would continue on until it was time for you to get off the bus.
Keadaan David menjadi semakin memburuk ketika ibunya melahirkan putra bungsunya, Jamie. Sebagai anak tertua, ia dituntut ibunya untuk menjaga dan merawat adik-adiknya. Dan jika adik bungsunya Jamie merusak barang-barang di dalam rumah atau ada sesuatu yang pecah, Davidlah yang menjadi sasaran kemarahan ibunya. Sang ibu akan membawa ikat pinggang atau sapu untuk menghukum David. Pada masa kanak-kanak, David mempunyai seorang teman bermain yang tinggal di dekat rumahnya. Seorang gadis kecil yang berusia sebaya dengannya. Gadis itu adalah Catherine. Mereka berdua membentuk ikatan yang kuat karena Catherine juga memiliki masa kecil yang mengganggu.
She sort of never really had a chance from the word go. Her mother died when she was 10 months old. She was shipped off to live with her father in South Africa for a couple of years.
There are varying reports from people who knew her as a child who say, you know, that her father didn't want her, then he did, then he didn't, the grandparents didn't want her.
She was a desperate little child that none of the other kids would play with, no one would have anything to do with because of the environment she came from, I think.
David tumbuh sebagai anak laki-laki yang bertubuh kurus dengan kepribadian terhambat. Saat di sekolah hari Minggu, Arden Collins memperhatikan bahwa dia mempunyai masalah psikologis.
But this little boy had strange drawings, really strange, violent drawings. He was ripping his crayon across the paper. He was screwing up his paper. Body language was violent. The body language was angry.
He, I believe, was first institutionalised at about 8 years of age. Breaking and entering, stealing and receiving, things like that.
Pada pertengahan tahun 1960-an, David telah menginjak remaja ketika dia bertemu kembali dengan Catherine. Dan saat itu, David telah memiliki catatan pelanggaran di usia remaja. Kemudian pasangan yang menjadi mitra dalam kejahatan itu segera melakukan serangkaian tindakan kriminal, seperti perampokan, pembobolan rumah, dan pencurian mobil. Mereka selalu tertangkap, tetapi dikarenakan usia mereka masih muda, mereka tidak mendapatkan hukuman berat.
Well, she found a soulmate, someone with the same circumstances, someone that she could relate to. Without David Burney, then Catherine Burney's life probably would have been one of absolute and utter despair and loneliness and misery, given her upbringing.
I think it was a lethal combination of Kath and David together, because every time they get together, they're in trouble. And history has shown that. They went on crime spree virtually from when they were 13 or 14 years of age. They had for the first time at 14. Then they went out on stealing sprees.
Pada usia 15 tahun, David meninggalkan sekolah dan mulai bekerja di tempat pelatihan kuda di Perth milik Eric Burnham. Tetapi kemudian terjadi insiden yang dilaporkan oleh seorang wanita tua yang sedang menginap di salah satu kabin.
The first time I went to his mother's and father's place, they had an ashtray on the table, 2 foot high, full of shit butts. And I took him because he was little, and I said, I could make you a jockey. He said, all right, so don't smoke. I said, who smokes? That's rubbish. He said, Mum and Dad. I reckon snow wouldn't have melted his mouth. Because he never done not one thing wrong at my place. And I think I had 2 little kids and a wife. And he could have mucked around, but no, not a word. He's just trying to come in and get into bed with me. Oh, I said, the devil. He wasn't very big either. But she said, luckily, she had a little dog as big as a mouse.
Anjing itu kemudian menyerang David, lalu ia pun segera pergi.
By the time that David Burney was 20, he was in the big league. The pair of them had been caught doing his usual things, stealing cars and breaking and entering and shoplifting and multitude of other crimes. And for the first time, she went to jail for 6 months.
Setelah Catherine dipenjara selama 6 bulan, Catherine dan David tidak lagi berhubungan. Catherine lalu bekerja sebagai asisten rumah tangga dan menikahi salah satu putra majikannya, Don McLagan.
They married on her 21st birthday, seemed very, very happy together and had 6 children. One of them, unfortunately, a little boy, was killed in front of Catherine, was run over in front of Catherine, which psychiatrists believe may have contributed to her terrible, terrible future. She seemed to be perfectly happy for quite a long time.
Dan pada usia 21 tahun, David juga menikahi seorang gadis bernama Carrie. Pada awal 1980-an, David dan Catherine telah menjalani kehidupan pernikahan terpisah. Catherine memiliki 6 anak dengan suaminya, Don McLagan, dan David dengan istrinya, Carrie, juga menjalani kehidupan pernikahan yang bahagia selama 6 tahun. Dan mereka memiliki seorang putri bernama Tanya. Tetapi semuanya berubah ketika David menderita cedera kepala saat bekerja di tongkang pengerukan di Banbury. Ketika sebuah drum besar terjatuh dan mengenai kepalanya hingga meninggalkan luka yang sangat parah. Ia menjadi sedikit lamban dalam berpikir dan mengerjakan sesuatu. Tetapi satu hal kebiasaannya yang tidak berubah adalah ia terlibat perselingkuhan dengan banyak wanita.
He had a lot of affairs over the years, and again, all after the accident with the drum on his head. He had several different women every year.
Setelah 10 tahun menikah, akhirnya pernikahan mereka pun berakhir. Ketika David membawa pacar selingkuhannya yang baru berusia 16 tahun untuk tinggal di rumah bersama anak dan istrinya.
We moved our daughter into our bed. I moved into our daughter's bedroom with her. It destroyed my self-esteem completely for a long time. And it took a long time to come back from that.
Ketika David memindahkan pacarnya yang masih remaja itu ke rumah mereka, Carrie dan putrinya memilih untuk pergi meninggalkan rumah.
She was very, very unhappy in her marriage. And one day she said, I've had enough. Walked out the door and never came back and went to live with David Burney.
Dan pada saat ini, David dan Catherine akhirnya bertemu kembali. Dan Catherine menyadari bahwa ia masih begitu sangat ingin bersama David. Sehingga Catherine memutuskan untuk pergi begitu saja, meninggalkan suami dan anak-anaknya tanpa sepatah kata pun.
No, he had nothing. Didn't know what was going on. She just said she was going to walk and never come back home.
Catherine dan David mulai tinggal bersama di Jalan Moorhouse Village di sebelah timur Fremantle. Lalu suatu ketika, Carrie membawa putrinya, Tanya, untuk berkunjung menemui ayahnya, David. Dan Carrie begitu terkejut melihat bagaimana kehidupan David.
My impression was they'd rather sit watching TV than cleaning the house up. And they'd eat and there'd be food and all that round where they'd been eating. And I thought, I don't know how you can live like that. And she's also quite reserved around David.
Setelah mereka tinggal bersama, lalu Catherine segera mengubah nama belakangnya menjadi Catherine Burney. Pada masa ini, David mulai bermain-main dengan fantasi sadomasokis, yakni satu bentuk penyimpangan dalam hubungan intim yang perilaku pelakunya mencari kepuasan dengan melakukan kekerasan.
David had a amazing appetite. From what he was capable of, actually, day in, day out.
He can't seem to live without having with females. He needs it. If he can't get it, he'll...
Tetapi hal yang di luar nalar dari hasrat gelap seorang David Burney yang mengejutkan adalah ia memaksa untuk melampiaskan hasrat gelapnya itu dengan melakukan hubungan intim pada adik laki-lakinya sendiri.
When he broke up with his girlfriend, and since he needed to have sex every night, he didn't get it. So on about Wednesday, so 3 nights later, he asked if he could do it with me. I refused, and he kept on asking, and I kept on refusing, and I went to bed. But when I went to sleep, he came into my room and started doing it while I was asleep.
Dan tak hanya itu, ketika ia telah hidup bersama dengan Catherine, David memberikan hadiah ulang tahun yang tak wajar untuk adik bungsunya, Jamie.
At all up till my 21st birthday, as a birthday present, I was with Kathy.
Apa yang telah dilakukan oleh David Burney sebagai seorang kakak terhadap adiknya, Jamie, telah menjadikan Jamie tumbuh menjadi seorang pelaku kejahatan seksual. Jamie telah dipenjara karena pemaksaan melakukan hubungan dewasa dengan seorang wanita berusia 80 tahun dan pada seorang gadis kecil berusia 6 tahun.
Because I had sexual problems of my own, and I had two indecent dealing charges against me. I was just going through a bad time when I was in there, and that what my brother did to me.
Suatu hari, David memberitahu Catherine tentang keinginannya berpartisipasi dalam grup seks. Lalu Catherine mencoba membujuk seorang teman wanitanya untuk bergabung dengan mereka, tapi temannya itu segera menolaknya. Dari sana kemudian mereka mulai mencari lebih jauh agar wanita dapat berpartisipasi, baik secara sukarela ataupun tidak. Untuk sobat semua, sebelum lanjut ada baiknya untuk mengklik terlebih dahulu tombol like, share, dan subscribe, serta tombol notifikasinya, agar tak ketinggalan update kisah nyata tak biasa dari K Channel selanjutnya. Mary Nielsen, gadis berusia 22 tahun, datang untuk membeli ban dengan harga murah dari David dan Catherine Burney. Tetapi sesungguhnya itu adalah sebuah jebakan.
Mary Nielsen was a young university student who worked part-time at a delicatessen and was a typical young lady. Her parents lived in an affluent area in Perth. He got a phone number and she then left. He went home and spoke to Kathy, and as a result Kathy rang Mary and made arrangements for Mary to come and view the tyres.
Segera setelah Mary masuk ke dalam rumah mereka, ia langsung diserang oleh pasangan ini. Mary diancam dengan pisau dan kemudian diikat ke tempat tidur. Lalu Catherine mendorong David untuk melakukan hal yang menjadi mimpi buruk yang akan dialami si korban.
She would stimulate parts of David Burney's anatomy while he was the young lady and turning on more.
Dan setelahnya, Catherine bertugas menjaga Mary di rumah. Sementara David, ia mengemudikan mobil Mary ke pusat kota, lalu membiarkan mobil tersebut terparkir di tempat parkir yang berlokasi di seberang markas besar polisi Perth.
They researched with local councils where they could leave a car and, for how many days before it would be discovered.
Sepulangnya David ke rumahnya, ia kembali melakukan perbuatan kejinya, memaksa Mary untuk berhubungan kesekian kalinya. Sementara Catherine, ia sangat menikmati menonton apa yang dilakukan oleh David terhadap Mary.
He walked up into the city where he caught a taxi and was then dropped off at the shopping centre some 200 metres from where he lived. He then walked back home where he then Mary again.
Setelah pasangan ini merasa terpuaskan atas apa yang mereka lakukan pada Mary, kemudian mereka menyumpal mulut Mary dan membawanya ke Taman Nasional Glen Eagle. Sesampainya di sana, lagi-lagi David kembali melampiaskan hasrat iblisnya pada Mary. Sebelum David mengakhiri hidup Mary dengan cara yang keji.
And then placed her in the vehicle while she was still alive, and drove her to Glen Eagle, where she was then assaulted again and strangled.
Catherine told me that she and David read a book called Perfect Murder before they ever met Mary and used that as a blueprint for what they would do.
Mary menjadi wanita muda pertama yang dikuburkan di kuburan dangkal yang telah digalinya di daerah ini. Dua minggu setelah pembunuhan pertama, Suzanne Candy, atau biasa dipanggil dengan Sue Candy, diculik oleh pasangan Bernie saat dia menumpang ke mobil mereka di sepanjang jalan Sterling Highway di Claremont. Sue Candy masih berusia 15 tahun.
Absolute child. It's terrible. It really is terrible.
Dengan adanya Catherine di dalam mobil, cukup mudah bagi pasangan Bernie ini untuk mencari dan meyakinkan calon korbannya yang mereka temui di jalan untuk menerima tawaran tumpangan.
So they would go out hunting. Hunting is probably the most apt word for a victim.
A lady leans out the passenger side window. Hi, can we give you a lift? Or hi, can we help you? Which way are you going? Of course. Let's jump straight in the back of the car.
Dan calon penumpang yang akan menjadi korbannya tidak ditentukan oleh David, tetapi Catherine sebagai pengambil keputusan. Catherine Bernie mengembangkan metode selektif yang mematikan dalam memilih korbannya. Ketika si korban masuk ke dalam mobil, Catherine memutuskan wanita mana yang bisa disetubuhi oleh David. Dan mereka berdua memiliki kode tersendiri. Catherine akan mengatakan, "Aku punya cemilan." Dan David akan menjawab ya atau tidak.
And then if she fitted the bill, they had a code term. They referred to munchies. If he said yes, they bring out the knife and subdue the victim.
Next thing you know, the lady's in the back of the car with a knife at their throat, holding them down, threatening them that they'll be killed if they don't shut up and just go with them. Best trick in the book.
Setelah Catherine menyuruh David untuk berkeliling mencari korbannya dan membawa pulang ke rumah, lalu ia mempersilahkan David melakukan perbuatan tak bermoral pada korbannya, di mana Catherine menontonnya dari dekat dan mencatat reaksi-reaksi para korbannya. Lalu David dan Catherine mengakhiri hidup mereka. Seperti pada korban sebelumnya, pasangan Bernie ini kembali melakukan perbuatan kejamnya pada Sue Candy. Kali ini, mereka mulai menggunakan rantai untuk mengikat korbannya ke tempat tidur. mereka juga memaksa Sue Candy untuk menulis surat pada keluarganya bahwa Sue Candy akan pergi ke Queensland bersama teman-temannya. Lalu keesokan harinya, Sue diancam akan kehilangan nyawanya jika dia tidak menelpon untuk mengatakan kata-kata yang telah ditulis oleh Catherine pada secari kertas.
With little Sue Candy, Kathy also got her to write 3 letters. Those 3 letters were then put into envelopes, and subsequently the first letter that Sue wrote was posted the day that she was killed. The second letter was posted a week later, and the third letter was posted 2 weeks after she was killed. The parents got a phone call from Susanna the following day to say she'd be staying with friends, and then and she'd be home afterwards.
The way that the Bernies had operated, they'd sent letters. Well, they'd had the victims write letters and send them to their families sort of week apart or two, so not to arouse particular suspicion, or at least early in the missing phase.
Setelah David selesai melampiaskan hasratnya pada Sue Candy, lalu Catherine naik ke tempat tidur dengan mereka. Kemudian David dan Catherine secara bersama-sama telah membuat Sue Candy tidak lagi bisa bernafas. Setelah dipastikan bahwa Sue Candy telah tewas, lalu ia dikuburkan di hutan semak Glen Eagle, di mana letaknya tidak jauh dari kuburan Mary Nielsen. Dalam waktu 2 minggu, David dan Catherine telah melenyapkan 2 wanita muda.
Sepuluh hari setelah kematian Susanny Candy, pasangan sakit jiwa ini kemudian kembali mendapatkan korban ketiga mereka, yakni Noreen Pearson, wanita muda yang berusia 31 tahun. Tetapi kali ini agak berbeda, karena David menjadi terpesona oleh Noreen. Usianya sama dengan Catherine, tetapi Noreen adalah wanita yang cantik dan anggun yang tidak ada pada Catherine.
Catherine Burney was scruffy and scrawny and common and unattractive, and while this young lady was a very beautiful young lady, and she was elegant.
Pada malam naas itu, Noreen sedang berdiri di samping mobilnya karena kehabisan bensin di jalan raya. Dan secara kebetulan, saat itu pula, pasangan Bernie sedang berburu mencari korban baru mereka berikutnya. Setelah mendapatkan Catherine di rumah mereka, David dan Catherine kembali melakukan hasrat gelapnya pada Noreen seperti yang mereka lakukan pada korban-korban sebelumnya. Pada saat ini, Noreen sadar bahwa nyawanya berada dalam bahaya. Lalu ia mulai membuat satu permainan dengan harapan ia akan selamat. Noreen mulai berbicara dan berteman dengan David, dan merayu David agar dirinya tidak berakhir dengan kematian di tangan mereka.
Because Nolene was 31 years of age, she was mature. What she tried was a bit of reverse psychology, and she tried to befriend David to see if she could talk away out of being killed.
Dan rupanya, upaya Noreen berhasil, hingga membuat David dan Catherine bertengkar hebat, karena kecemburuan Catherine yang membabi buta atas perlakuan istimewa David pada Noreen 2 hari setelah Noreen di tangan mereka. Bahkan Catherine mengancam akan mengakhiri hidupnya jika David memilih mengistimewakan Noreen.
Kathy actually offered to kill herself if David wanted to be with Nolene. The following morning, she rang a friend to say that her vehicle was parked at a location and run out of fuel. She was staying with some friends, everything was okay, and would that friend of hers please go and pick a car up and park it up safely.
David pun akhirnya menyerah pada keinginan Catherine. Dan kali ini, Catherine lah satu-satunya orang yang telah membuat nyawa Noreen berakhir di tangannya. Lalu mereka kembali ke hutan semak Glen Eagle untuk menguburkan Noreen.
David said that Nolene was different from the other girls and she deserved to be put into a different place to the other girls. She she was in actual fact buried with her knickers still on, and also away from the other two girls.
Empat hari setelah Noelin terbunuh, seorang wanita berusia 21 tahun, Dennis Brown, menjadi korban keempat mereka. Dennis adalah operator komputer paruh waktu yang tinggal bersama pacarnya. Namun naas, pada malam itu, ia menerima tumpangan mobil dari pasangan sakit jiwa ini, The Burneys. Dan pada malam itu, mereka melakukan hal yang sama seperti terhadap korban mereka sebelumnya pada Dennis. Keesokan harinya, seperti biasa, ia dipaksa menelpon salah satu temannya untuk mengatakan bahwa dia akan pergi selama beberapa hari.
The purpose of that was to ensure that there was no evidence left at the house. To say, well, that's what come off this victim, now let's get rid of it.
Di hutan Wanneroo, David Burney melampiaskan lagi hasrat liarnya pada Dennis. Dan kemudian, ia membuat Dennis benar-benar menghembuskan nafas terakhirnya dengan cara yang luar biasa keji.
David had an axe in the boot of his car. He ran to the boot of the car, got the axe, and he actually hit her in the head to kill her.
Beberapa hari kemudian, pasangan Burney ini kembali melanjutkan perburuan mereka demi memenuhi nafsu gelapnya yang tumbuh semakin menjadi dalam menjalankan fantasi iblis mereka yang brutal. Fantasi yang mereka ciptakan bersama beberapa tahun sebelumnya ketika mereka kembali bersama setelah masing-masing pernikahan mereka berakhir. Setelah 4 korban tewas di tangan mereka kembali mengincar korban lainnya. Dan target mereka adalah gadis muda berusia 17 tahun. Gadis itu adalah Katie Moyer. Dan Katie adalah satu-satunya korban yang berhasil lolos dari cengkraman pasangan predator ini, sekaligus akhir dari perburuan mereka. David dan Catherine diinterogasi di tempat yang jauh terpisah. Saat diinterogasi, Catherine mengelak atas semua tuduhan terhadapnya. Ia mengaku tidak tahu apapun terkait hal yang dituduhkan terhadapnya. Sementara David Burney di ruang interogasi lain, walaupun awalnya ia tidak mengakui, tetapi dalam waktu yang tidak lama, polisi berhasil mendesaknya untuk mengakui perbuatannya. Dan ia bersedia mengantarkan polisi untuk menunjukkan di mana korban-korban dikuburkan.
Vince, who was standing behind me, looked down at David and said, "Come on, David, come on, how many is there?" And he looked at Vince and he said, "There's 4." And he named the 4 girls.
Mary Nelson, Sue Candy, Noelin Patterson, Denise Brown.
Vince Kadich turned to Bernie after they'd questioned he and Catherine, nothing doing, and just in a throwaway line, he said, "It's getting dark. Let's get the shovel and go and dig them up." And then to his astonishment, David Burney said, "Okay, there's 4 of them."
Kathy had been informed that David had admitted to us that he had been involved in the death of 4 girls, and that he was prepared to take us up and show us where the bodies were.
Where?
At that stage, she wanted to speak to David. She was told that she couldn't do that, and she then agreed to accompany the boys, Bob and Chris, to the sites.
I was in the back seat with her in a police vehicle, and she directed us to the first one, which was in fact the most recent victim. And then we went to the next one, which was the other side of Perth, directly the other side of Perth, south of Perth, to Glen Eagles National Park, which is a very large area of land. And we were fortunate in that they were able to direct us to each of the gravesites.
We turned left where he told us to turn left, and he said, right, stop there. There's a log over there. Behind that log is the body of Sue Candy. She was buried the other side of the highway, away from the other two girls. And when he conveyed us over there, in actual fact, Kathy Burney said that she wanted to point out where Nolene was buried. Kathy refused to refer to Nolene by name, just called her that woman.
The last young lady's grave that Catherine Burney took them to, she was very, very proud of that, because this was the young lady that Catherine Burney had herself, and she very proudly said, come on, come this way, it's over here. Ah, there it is, yes it is, and then showed them the mount and then spat on it.
Penangkapan Catherine dan David Burney menjadi topik berita utama yang menggegerkan warga Australia. Sekaligus dicap menjadi pasangan predator yang paling dibenci di Australia.
The body of the fourth victim was discovered in a pine plantation north of the city. Police believe the women were forced into the graves and their throats cut before being buried.
2 minutes past 6, Channel 7 News, 11th of November, 1986. Not the way to find something out like that. That's exactly how I found out on the news. I was absolutely mortified at the thought that he could have done things like that.
It's believed today's
Shock, horror, dismay, disbelief. I think I experienced every negative emotion a person can experience.
When all this came out, we got a shock. There were people we were really shocked, all of us were very shocked. And for quite some times afterwards, whenever I had to give our address or something, as soon as I said Morehouse Street, they'd immediately, oh, that's that notorious street.
Pada waktu persidangan tiba, mereka dikawal ketat oleh petugas polisi menuju pengadilan Fremantle, di mana para warga banyak berkumpul untuk melontarkan berbagai cacian kebencian pada pasangan predator ini.
And the police are trying to bring Catherine Burney, and the two police officers put their hands on her. She went off. Spitting, scratching, swearing, kicking, biting, yelling and screaming like a mad woman.
Catherine dan David Burney tampak dengan begitu jelas ketidakpeduliannya terhadap para korban yang telah mereka renggut nyawanya, dan terhadap para keluarga korban yang ditinggalkan.
And she reaches forward with that finger, and she starts to stroke the ball of his thumb. It's like this, for about 10 times. I just sat there staring at this. It was unbelievable devotion, and she couldn't have cared what that judge was saying. She had no thoughts about that at all. Her focus was entirely on her beloved David.
David Burney dan Catherine Burney, keduanya sama-sama dijatuhi hukuman penjara seumur hidup dengan keputusan hakim bahwa mereka berdua tidak boleh dibebaskan. David Burney dihukum penjara seumur hidup di bawah keamanan dengan standar maksimum. Dan di dalam penjara, ia masih membutuhkan keamanan yang ketat, karena David juga mendapatkan berbagai cercaan oleh para tahanan lainnya, hingga ia sering diperlakukan kasar, baik dalam bentuk cacian maupun secara fisik.
There was no sympathy at all for Burney, who had been a predator on innocent people. And the fact that he pleaded guilty.
Paul Ferguson dan kepolisian Perth masih belum memecahkan misteri hilangnya para gadis lainnya. Tetapi mereka meyakini pasangan Burney ini terlibat atas hilangnya gadis muda, di mana dalam kasus tersebut terdapat seorang gadis yang masih berusia 12 tahun.
I'm certainly David was involved in the death of several other young women. Kathy, I believe, has a knowledge of those deaths if she was not involved in them.
I believe there was Cheryl Renwick, Barbara Weston, Lisa Mott.
You know, the one that's with me always is the Lisa Mott one. To me, that amount of circumstantial evidence is bothers me.
Dan pada saat polisi mulai kembali menyelidiki keterkaitan David Burney dengan hilangnya 3 gadis muda yang masih belum terpecahkan, tetapi pada pukul 4 pagi, David Burney yang berusia 54 tahun ditemukan tewas di sel tahanannya.
Almost 20 years after he's jailed, David Burney hangs himself in his prison cell.
Sementara Catherine Burney masih berada di balik jeruji besi dengan standar keamanan maksimum di penjara wanita di Perth. Pada saat ini, Catherine mengajukan pembebasan bersyarat untuk dirinya karena undang-undang di Australia Barat menyatakan bahwa setelah 20 tahun penjara, setiap penjahat mendapat akses terhadap kesempatan pembebasan bersyarat setiap 3 tahun.
Paul Ferguson doesn't have an opinion. It's up to the system to deal with it the way it happens. Paul Ferguson, the man, would be horrified if that woman was ever released back into the public.
Katie sebagai satu-satunya korban selamat, ia harus kembali bersaksi di muka sidang untuk melawan Catherine Burney berulang kali. Dan berulang kali pula, Katie harus mengenang kembali traumanya di depan umum. Lalu dia memutuskan untuk menentang sistem tersebut. Dia menulis Dead Girl Walking, sebuah buku yang menceritakan pengalamannya, dan ia menjadi advokat bagi para korban kejahatan kekerasan. Melalui kerja kerasnya, ia berhasil mereformasi sistem pembebasan bersyarat di Australia. Pada tahun 2018, sebuah undang-undang diperkenalkan oleh anggota parlemen yang memuji Katie atas karyanya. Undang-undang baru ini menetapkan bahwa penjahat yang didakwa melakukan 3 pembunuhan atau lebih dalam satu persidangan tidak memenuhi syarat untuk mendapatkan pembebasan bersyarat. Atas pengajuan dari Catherine Burney tentang pembebasan bersyaratnya, Dewan Peninjauan Tahanan Australia Barat mempertimbangkan atas pengajuan pembebasan bersyarat untuk Catherine. Dan pada bulan berikutnya, Jaksa Agung menolak pengajuan Catherine Burney untuk pembebasan bersyarat.
I'm glad that they refused parole because when you look at the big picture of these homicides, they were committed and convicted of 4 of the most vicious killings that you'd ever. Their behaviour, from kidnapping to the deprivation of liberty, the sexual assault and then the murder. Unacceptable to behaviour in society today.
I say, if you are accused and convicted of murder, you should never be allowed out of prison. Your victim doesn't get parole. Why should you?
I would safely say that any future parole hearings, however regularly apart they are under West Australian jurisdiction, would be rejected. There would be a huge uproar in Western Australia if Catherine Burney was ever released.
I think she's beyond redemption. I think that, you know, it's kind of like that scorpion and the frog. You can't change the core nature of somebody, and I think the core nature of Catherine is bad.
Seperti halnya para keluarga korban, apa yang telah dilakukan oleh David dan Catherine Burney juga telah meninggalkan luka mendalam bagi Carrie dan putrinya.
She said to me one day, Mum, why did he kill them? Why did he feel that he needed to take ladies off the street and kill them? I said, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Putri dari David dan Carrie, Tanya, kini telah berganti nama dan tidak pernah ingin mengakui sebagai putri dari David Burney. Sementara putra bungsu Catherine menyerukan agar ibunya Catherine untuk dieksekusi. Dia menyatakan bahwa apa yang telah dilakukan ibunya telah mengakibatkan dia diserang beberapa kali oleh warga, dan ia mendukung kampanye dari Katie Moyer. Suatu hari, seorang penulis juga sebagai manajer pendidikan komunitas membuat kesalahan dengan mengkritik Catherine.
In her normal, when she's just being Catherine, she speaks in this very childish voice. She's very almost passive and willing to please. And I just said, Catherine, don't come the helpless female with me. It gives me the shits. She turned around and grabbed me. Her face had completely changed. It changed in an instant from just being this passive, quiet, mousy woman to someone whose eyes were almost, you know, they were glowing with rage or something, I don't know. She said to me, Ruth, you don't know what power is until you've held someone's life in your hands. My base instinct then was to think, okay, now I get it. Now I see the woman who has committed murder. Because I did. I saw that complete change in her. And it happened in a second.
Ruth Fix juga menemukan bahwa Catherine berhubungan dengan para wanita pembunuh terkenal lainnya.
Well, she certainly used to write to Myra Hindley, who was one half of the partnership with Ian Brady, known as the Moors murderers in England. She told me that she was writing to Myra. She also said that she wrote to Aileen Wuornos, who was an American serial killer in Florida who was put to death a few years ago. I actually think that she enjoyed the notoriety of being able to communicate with other people who were infamous killers on the same level.
Polisi menyimpulkan dan meyakini bahwa Catherine adalah dalang dari semua kejahatan ini.
Make no bones about it. Kathy Burney was the puppeteer. David Burney was the puppet. Kathy Burney orchestrated and controlled that situation.
Whether one led the other or vice versa, I think they're equally culpable and equally as evil, but even the word evil doesn't seem to fit to my head. It seems to be an understatement.
Tetapi apa yang mendasari seorang Catherine Burney untuk melakukan hal yang sejahat itu?
She had a belief that women were put on this earth to look after men and to service men and do what men wanted, and that she believed that David had been hurt by women, so therefore women should pay. She had absolutely no qualms at all of killing women.
Weedy, syphilitic little rat. She is an unattractive nobody, and they are now infamous in this nation. She has not got, to my recollection, one endearing feature about her. He had nothing. He was a typical nobody, yet he did these things that have left an indelible print on Australia.
Bagaimana menurut Sobat Kay semua? Silakan berbagi pendapatnya dengan sikap bijak ke dalam kolom komentar. Serta nantikan dokumenter kisah nyata yang berbeda selanjutnya dari Kay Channel. Dan berikut sejumlah referensi dalam dokumenter kisah nyata Kay Channel kali ini.